So Apple just released their new Vision Pro headset, which is a mixture of augmented reality and virtual reality. Some of you have probably heard of it already. If not, you should check it out because it's a really big deal. Such a big deal that there's actually an astrological signature for it. If you're not familiar with astrology already, oftentimes there are really big events in society or in history that correlate with astrological signatures that would relate to that event specifically. And in this video, I want to cover how the current astrology is showing this piece of hardware and this piece of equipment and how monumental it's going to be in the future by reflecting on the same astrological signature that has happened in the past and other things that have happened that have been monumental to society, specifically talking about technology and hardware. So if you don't know about it already, the Apple Vision Pro is essentially an augmented reality pair of glasses. You see everything, pretty much how the outside world looks, but then you could project a computer screen and you can interact with things in a very crazy way. This is going to be pivotal. Now, some people like Mac Address, which is one of my favorite tech channels, they don't really think it's that big of a deal, and I think that's fine, but there is a specific astrological signature I'm looking at that actually shows that it will be a big deal, just not right this moment. You see, right now, the planet Saturn is in the zodiac sign of Pisces. Now, if you're an astronomer type person, you're going to sit here and argue with me that it's in Aquarius. In astrology, we're using the tropical zodiac. It's different from the sidereal zodiac. That's not what this conversation is about today. But now that Saturn is in Pisces, it is also co-present with the planet Neptune. In astrology, we're typically looking for big transits. Like, when does a major planet go into a new zodiac sign, and when does that planet interact with another major planet? Whenever two major planets interact with each other, there's typically some sort of symbolic thing that happens, and that's of course always dependent on what planet you're talking about with whatever planet. And today we're going to be talking about Saturn and Neptune, because it seems as if every time Saturn and Neptune conjoin each other or go opposite each other, there seems to be a new breakthrough in technology that shapes the whole world around us. Now, currently Saturn is in Pisces with Neptune in Pisces, but they won't actually officially make their conjunction until about 2025 and 2026. And this conjunction will actually happen in the zodiac sign of Aries, which I will get to in just one moment. But I find that interesting because if you watch the Apple release event, they stated that the Apple Vision Pro will not be released until 2024. And if you look at a chart, Saturn might be co-present with Neptune, but they're not really that close. In astrology, a conjunction is typically when two planets are within about 10 degrees of each other. And it's funny because Saturn doesn't get within about 10 degrees of Neptune until 2024. But the actual conjunction will not happen until we get to 2025, 2026. But why I think this is a big deal is because Saturn rules things like reality. Like, Saturn is like, hey, this is reality. This is how you need to grow up. This is how you need to face life. It's very concrete. But Neptune rules illusion and fantasy and mysticism and media. And when you have the planet of reality conjoining the planet of media, you might be able to think, what is real? What is not real? How do things like reality and media mix together? Now, the zodiac sign of Pisces is a very spiritual sign. In fact, we can actually look back to 2011, 2012, when Neptune entered Pisces. Pisces is all about storytelling and dreams and vision, and I talk a lot about what Pisces represents in my Jupiter in Pisces video, as well as my Saturn in Pisces video, as well as my podcast, The Delineation, where I talk all about the history of Saturn and Pisces. So make sure you watch those videos if you want to understand more about Pisces. But in 2011/2012, Neptune ingressed into Pisces, and Neptune obfuscates. It makes things very weird, and again, it's like movie magic. You know, when you're watching a movie, it makes you feel like you're immersed in it. When Neptune first entered Pisces in about 2011, 2012 was when we actually had the advent of social media. Now, I understand social media was around before that, but that's when we had things like Instagram get invented, and it was much more available on our smartphones, and things took off from there. Now, as Saturn conjoins Neptune, we're getting to a pivotal moment with what media looks like in this world. Let's retrace our steps a little bit. Now, I can go back all the way to about 1917 when we had a Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Leo. However, I've struggled getting the correct history on when movies and colored movies were actually first invented. Now, some people are going to say in the comments, this is the year, or this is the year, and I've struggled getting a precise timeline on that, so I don't want to go to there, but I want to talk about Saturn opposite Neptune in 1971. In 1971, Saturn ingressed into Gemini, Gemini ruling communications, and Neptune was in Sagittarius. Sagittarius is also about storytelling or spreading things or vision. Now, like I said before, Saturn-Neptune conjunctions and Saturn-Neptune oppositions seem to be very big deals when it comes to media and technology. And in 1971, we had the advent of email being created. Now, think today how important email is. It's almost, 50 years old. It's actually over 50 years old, and we still use it every single day. It has absolutely transformed how we send messages to one another. Now I want to bring you to 1989. 1989, 1990, around that time, we had a Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Now, this was in the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn is much more like corporate, industry, physical goods. And around that time is when we had the first Game Boy be created. This was a pivotal moment in handheld gaming that has then actually transferred into things like phones, into things like, personal gaming. Now, if we fast forward to about 2006, this is when Saturn went opposite Neptune in Leo and Aquarius. And this was the advent of the iPhone. Now, back then, people did realize how big of a deal it was, but I don't think they could have conceived how big of a deal it is today. Almost everyone has an iPhone, and if not everyone having an iPhone, everyone has a smartphone. It's funny that Neptune was in the sign of Aquarius, which Aquarius is about society and the people, and we started to connect with people and share stories and share information. And Saturn was in Leo. Leo is all about, being seen and being witnessed and being on the stage, and the advent of the iPhone has made everybody, somewhat of a celebrity. You have social media culture where if you just put a phone in your face and record, you can blow up overnight. And so you've had this weird, interesting connection between the whole world and how the world sees you versus what technology or tool that you have in your hand. So we have email, the Game Boy, the iPhone with the Saturn-Neptune oppositions and conjunctions. And now we're going to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction that technically happens in Aries. The first one technically happens in 2025. They don't actually conjoin each other. They get about less than a degree apart, but the full Saturn-Neptune conjunction doesn't happen until 2026. Now, this is the sign of Aries. What do you think of when you think of Aries besides fighting and conflict? Aries rules the self, it rules the identity. And the way I like to look at the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries is going to be the augmented reality singularity event. Now, I got that term from Cal Newport. If you're not familiar with Cal Newport, he's an amazing author. I really recommend all of his books. I got that term from him, and I have spoken about the augmented reality singularity event in some of my previous videos. But this is going to be a turning point. More and more, we're already seeing QR codes everywhere. We're now seeing how we interact more and more with a digital world and a digital interface. And so why I think this Apple Vision Pro event is so big astrologically is this is going to be setting that off. Now, I don't think the Apple Vision Pro is going to be a big deal right now. I think by the time we get to 2025 and 2026, you will see more and more people adapting to this, bringing it on, more applications being used where more and more people use it in their every single day. You got to think, not a lot of people moved over to an iPhone when it was first released, but if you look around everywhere now, it's almost impossible to navigate the world without a smartphone. Now, the other thing I think is interesting is if you watch my delineation video about Saturn and Pisces, I talked about all about the history of Saturn and Pisces from the last time it happened in the 1990s and in the 1960s and in the 1930s and the 1900s. Now, the last time Saturn was in Pisces in the early 90s was actually the invention of the PlayStation and the Xbox. So I was already kind of preparing for some sort of, gaming piece of equipment or some sort of, technological equipment related to media being present. But now when it comes to this augmented reality singularity glasses thing, I'm an Apple nerd. I've been, keeping the tabs on this, but I think it's so interesting that they didn't talk about it until Saturn entered Pisces. What's even more interesting to me is, like I said before, it's not until Saturn gets actually a lot closer to Neptune in 2024 when this product gets launched. So while some people might say it's not a big deal or it's not going to, be taken on that quick, I beg to differ because email wasn't going to be that big of a deal. The iPhone wasn't going to be that big of a deal. Game Boy, there were people that were saying, oh, it's going to be a big deal. It's not going to be a big deal. The astrology is interesting, and it shows that this is actually a bigger deal than one might expect. This is also coinciding with Pluto's ingress into Aquarius. And as we've seen Pluto go into Aquarius, we've seen AI just absolutely flood the world. Everyone's talking about AI and how they're going to integrate it into their, workflows or into their systems or into their products. Aquarius is all about the digital and all about the tech, and Pluto is all about like control and power. And I did a whole video about the history of Pluto and Aquarius if you want to watch more about that. But as we're in this Pluto and Aquarius age where more and more tech is being involved as well, some people will say that we're in the age of Aquarius, and technically we're not. But what we are in is a new triplicity shift. What's a triplicity shift? Every 20 years, Jupiter and Saturn conjoin each other in the sky. Historically speaking, this has been a really big deal for people, and it's represented new ages, the rise of a new king or the fall of a new king if we're talking about like ancient astrology. In fact, the Star of Bethlehem, the star that was known for finding Jesus, was actually a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. It is known as the Great Conjunction, and so we can talk all day long about how astrologers found Jesus, but Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions are big deals. Now, every 20 years, they conjoin each other in the sky, but for a set of 200 years, they conjoin each other in the same element of zodiac signs. For the past 200 years, Jupiter and Saturn have been conjoining each other in Earth signs. So think of the Industrial Revolution that has happened over the past 200 years. Earth is all about the material and products and resources, and we've seen an absolute explosion in what we understand are resources and what money looks like and what, industry looks like. But at the very end of 2020, on December of 2020, we had our first Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in air signs. And so for the next 200 years, we are in the age of air. Air is all about ideas and technology and communication. And now we're in this new era of that. With that happening, we have Pluto going into Aquarius, where now there's a lot more power at play when it comes to society and communication and technology. Added on top of that, the Saturn Neptune conjunction that's happening in Aries in 2025 and 2026, I believe that is when we're going to be much more immersed into the augmented reality singularity. As well, if you really want to get into it, Uranus will be entering Gemini when we get to about 2025, 2026, and that has very explosive impacts. And that is a very big deal throughout history. Uranus is all about innovations in technology, liberation, and it's going into the sign of communication. So over these next 3 years, you're going to see more and more technology come available. You're going to see more and more technology just being thrown into the market where our whole lives are consumed by it almost. But I believe it is marked by this Apple event that we just had, by the Apple Vision Pro. This is going to be the step forward into immersing ourselves more and more into a digital world. And I don't believe it will be a metaverse. It will be augmented reality. We will still be able to see trees in the nature, but everywhere we look, there will be screens. There will be digital information that we interact with. So I want to know what your guys' opinions on this below. If you're already into astrology and you follow my channel, what do you guys think of this conjunction? If you don't watch astrology stuff and you don't know who I am and you've never heard of astrology before and you're maybe a skeptic, but maybe you clicked on this because it had something to do with Apple, let me know what you think about this and if you think it's totally a crackpot or maybe there's something to this. Also, make sure you like this video. It really does support me in the channel. And I'll catch you guys next time.